Hi guys, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're learning how to make this 3-layered dress. I tried to make my own straps to be adjustable compared to the previous picture that we're trying to copy. Okay, so let's get started. Now I'll be using my pattern paper to do this illustration as usual. Now we're going to be drafting the main dress, that'll be carrying the layers of the peplum. So this is my shoulder, chest, and of course my hemline. Now for this dress, the length of the dress should be like 4-5 inches before your knee, yeah. So on the shoulder line, I would mark half of my across back measurements. Same thing on the chest line, okay. Then on the chest line, I'll be marking quarter of my bust circumference plus 1 inch for side seam allowance. Now this dress is going to be an A-line dress, so we don't need waistline, we don't need hip line. We'll go straight to the hemline. So first I'll connect my shoulder to chest line like this, okay, and then I'll use my French curve to create the armhole like so. So I'll just do this. Yeah, the dress is an off-shoulder dress, but we're just creating like the normal basic pattern for an A-line dress. So I will come down from my shoulder line by at least 4 inches, depending on how off you want it to be, or 5. It depends on how off actually, or you can even do 6. Okay, so then you determine the width, the depth of your neckline. Okay, so I'll just be doing 6 and I'll just connect it like that. So I don't need that shaded part again. Then on the hemline, I will mark quarter of my hip circumference first. Then because it's an A-line dress, I'll also be adding extra allowance to that. So I'll mark quarter of my hip first, then I'll just add at least 3 or 4 inches extra to make it an A-line dress. Okay, so I'll use my long ruler to connect like this. So what I have here is an off-shoulder A-line pattern, and it's dartless. Okay, so all you'll be adding to do will just be your seam allowance. Now I'm going to cut out, and this is going to be on fold. Okay, and then we're going to use the same pattern to cut the front and back. Okay, so this is my pattern here. So you'll be adding seam allowance to the hemline and the top part. Okay, but it's going to be cut on fold. Now this is my dress. You can see I've already cut it out. So you add half inch seam allowance to the top and the armhole. Then the lower part, I added almost 1.5 inch because I'll be doing a rolled hem there. Okay, so both of them are cut on fold. Now next thing, we are going to cut the first layer of the peplum, which must fit into the neckline and the armhole. So you fold your fabric like this into 2, okay? Then you place your dress like so and try to trace the neckline. You can see that I place it in form of like a bias. I think I should use my pattern so that we can see it clearly instead of using fabric. Let me use my pattern to do it instead of fabric. Yeah, this is the pattern, it's the same thing. So I'll just tilt my dress like this, like bias. Can you see? Then I will trace out the off-shoulder style line, the armhole, okay? And then let me just get my chalk. Okay, scissors. Now when you're cutting out, remember to add half inch seam allowance like so. Then you also trim into the armhole like this, and then you should use your chalk and demarcate where the side seam stops. So you can see that extension from the center front. That is what's going to give it that flare look, okay? So you can take off the pattern. Then from the off shoulder, we're going to measure the length of the peplum we want to work with. Let me just use my pattern paper. I need to mark where the side seam stops exactly. Let me use my chalk to mark that. Okay, here. Alright, so from here I'll be marking the length of the first peplum. Now I'll be doing 11 or 10 inches for the length of my peplum. So I'll just mark that value round like that. Okay, so I'll still come to this side here and mark it round. Make sure it's the same value. Okay, so you have to continue, till you get to that point where I marked the side seam. Okay, yes. All right, so here we are. I'll just place my pattern back, for us to have a closer look of what I just did here. This is it. Okay, and I use my chalk to mark the length of my peplum round. Okay, so you just do that round, like I said, and I'll just trace here out like this, or you could even extend your hand outward to have a more flare or something, depends, or you could just maintain the side seam like that. It's all the same. So I'll just cut it out. So that is going to be my first layer. So you can't just cut a random peplum and just attach it to the neckline. It has to rhyme with the armhole and all that. So this is my first peplum. Okay, and then you're cutting two. One will be for the front, the other for the back. Okay, now let's go ahead to cut the second layer. Okay, okay, I'm trying to cut out the second piece for the back. It's very easy. You just position the first one very well on top of the fabric, and then you cut out the second piece like what I'm doing right now. Okay, so one is for the front and the other piece is for the back. And do not forget to add your seam allowance, because I'll be using my serger or overlocker to lock off the rough edges. Okay, so here we're ready. Now let's go to the second layer. So this for the second layer. Okay, the second layer of the peplum should start at least 2 inches before the hemline of the first one. It shouldn't be exactly where the first one stops. Okay, so I'll just take my tape in and measure. So this is where the second one will stop. So I'll take my tape in like that, and then I'm going to mark that point, which is, or just notch, which is 2 inches above the first peplum. Okay, I hope that's making sense. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll measure the circumference of this place. So from here to here is about 10 or 11 or so. So meanwhile it's for the front and back, so that should be about 44 if you're using 11, or 40 if you're using 10. But because the peplum, we're going to be cutting in separate, front separate, back separate. Now I'm doing a half circle, and the radius is the circumference over 3.14. Okay, so like I said, we're cutting front separate, back separate. Now, so for the front, it's going to be 22 inches for the circumference divided by 3.14. Okay, and that will give me 7 approximately. So radius of a half circle is circumference divided by 3.14. Okay, so I'm cutting the half circle for the front separate, for the back separate. I hope that is clear. So all we'll do is you mark the you add the radius plus the length of the peplum together, and fold your paper twice, and then in form of a triangle like this. So next step, you mark out the length of the radius, which is 7. Okay, then next thing you're going to cut out. Okay, after cutting out, then you measure the length of the peplum, which is going to be the same thing with the first one. Okay, so you just measure it out, and we're doing 10 or 11, depends on what you want. So I'll just mark it around like this. Meanwhile, this is just for the front, so we're going to be cutting 2 of these on fabric. I hope we're not confused. Okay, yeah, radius of a half circle is circumference divided by 3.14. Okay, so this is how the peplum looks like for the second layer, and you could just add a little extension because of side seam allowance. Okay, so I'll transfer this to my fabric and I'll just go ahead to show us. So here, this is one and the second one. So one will be in front, one will be in back, meaning I cut 2 half circles. So I have the first layer of my peplum, which is the first one we cut out. Then this is my second layer. You start 2 inches, inwards before the end of the first one, like that. And of course, to cut the last layer is the same process. The only thing is the circumference might be a bit more than the second one. So I'll just mark like 2 inches inward into the second one. Okay, and mind you, the peplum must be longer than the dress itself. Okay, so by the time I mark where the peplum is going to be, by the time I measure it, definitely it's more than the first one. This is about 11. Okay, so 11 or say 12 rather. This is 12, I think. So by the time you multiply that by 4, that should give you about 48. Okay, so cutting the front and back separate, the circumference will be 24. Now all this is my own measurement. You have to use yours. Okay, so use the same process to cut the third layer. Okay, you also be cutting 2. This is second layer, and of course the third layer. And like I said, the peplum must be longer than the main dress. Okay, so we'll go straight to the sewing now. Now this is my dress. So this is the front. I would place my first layer of my peplum like this. Okay, and then you cut out your stripes like so. You just fold in 1/2 inch twice and sew it down. I mean for the stripes. So this is going to be in between the peplum and the dress. Okay, so you just place the stripe about 2 inches away from the armhole. Okay, and then you pin it down, and then same thing on the other side, 2 inches away from the armhole. Okay, and then you also place the stripes. Oh yeah, sorry, there was a mix-up there. I'm so sorry. The right side of the peplum is supposed to face the wrong side of the dress. Okay, that was a mix-up. That was a little mix-up. So you just place the stripe, and then after sewing, when you flip the peplum, okay, it will now be on the right side. Yeah. So what I said initially was a mix-up. So I'll just go ahead and turn there with 1/2 inch seam allowance round. Okay, and I'll repeat the same thing for the back. So this is the outcome. Okay, so be very careful with the placement of the stripes. Yeah, so this is the front, and I'll repeat the same thing for the back. So the stripe is actually supposed to be in between the peplum and the dress. Okay, and then you have this. Now let's go ahead to fix the second peplum. To fix the second peplum is pretty simple. All you just do is you're going to mark the points where you want to fix it and use your chalk and ruler. Okay, then you place the peplum on like so, and sew it, and make sure it's about 2 inches inward. Okay, so I'll do the same thing for the back. Okay, now I'll fix the second peplum, and you fix it inwards. You sew it inwards and then flip the peplum outwardly. Okay, meaning my seam allowance or is not showing outside, it's inwards. Now I'll repeat the same process for the third layer. Okay, same thing. Make sure you mark the 2 inch mark, and then make sure you use your chalk and ruler to mark it. Don't just assume. Okay, same thing. I'll go ahead and sew it for both the front and the back. So I'm done fixing all the layers, and I've used my serger to set the rough edges of my peplum. I'll go ahead now and roll them for the dress, make sure the peplum is longer than the dress. I've been stressing that since. Okay. All right, so we are almost done with the dress. Okay, so once you do the roll, then all you do is you are going to place the front and back together, right side facing right side. Okay, and then we are going to sew with 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, so you just pin down the peplums before you start sewing, and then I'll just show the final outcome of the dress. It's so lovely and very easy to make. Like, you don't need to stress out yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please leave your comments. If you have any other tutorial you would like me to do, just mention that in the comment section. Thank you very much.